Everyone thinks Iran is sitting on a ticking time bomb ready to shut down the world's most important oil route the moment a war breaks out. That is not what this is. Iran has no real incentive to close the Strait of Hormuz. An actual closure collapses Iran's own economy, invites a catastrophic military response, and permanently removes their single most powerful piece of leverage. What Iran did instead is something far more calculated. It made the world permanently uncertain about what it might do. That uncertainty alone reroutes ships, spikes insurance premiums, moves oil markets, and forces every sitting U.S. president to run Iran's reaction through their head before making any move in the Middle East. By the end of this video, you'll understand that Iran didn't build a weapon to destroy Hormuz. It built a weapon that is Hormuz. And once you see that, 40 years of Middle East policy looks completely different. Let's put some numbers on the table, because this story only makes sense with specifics. The Strait of Hormuz is 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. 33 kilometers. That's roughly the distance from one end of a mid-sized city to the other. Through that single corridor passes approximately 20% of the world's crude oil supply, and between 20 and 25% of all liquefied natural gas, traded globally every single day. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the IRGC, operates more than 1,000 fast-attack craft in those exact waters. Not nearby, in those waters. The U.S. Fifth Fleet is based in Bahrain, directly across the Gulf, close enough that response times are measured in minutes, not hours. Between 2019 and 2024, Iran seized or temporarily detained at least 20 commercial vessels in the Hormuz zone. Not theoretical incidents, 20 documented cases. The British-flagged MV Stena Impero in 2019 was one of them. Each incident sent insurance rates climbing before anyone fired a single shot. In April 2024, Iran launched more than 300 drones and missiles directly at Israel, the first direct Iranian state-on-state strike in that conflict. The IMF has documented that a $10 per barrel oil price increase adds 0.4% to global inflation. Think about what a $50 or $80 spike would mean. This is the architecture you need to understand before we go any further. Here's the part almost nobody is explaining clearly. Most coverage of Iran and Hormuz focuses on the threat, will they or won't they close it? That's the wrong question. It treats Iran as an impulsive actor, waiting to press a button. The mainstream framing isn't wrong, exactly the threat is real. But it misses the entire strategic design underneath it. What Iran actually built here is something far more sophisticated than a threat. And once you understand the design, the question changes completely. Here's the core of what Iran actually did, and we need to build this carefully, layer by layer. Start with geography. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just a shipping lane. It's a choke point, a single corridor system with no viable replacement route for most of the world's major oil importers. Japan gets 90% of its oil through Hormuz. South Korea, India, Pakistan, most of Europe, all running through the same 33-kilometer gap. There is no detour. There is no plan B that doesn't add weeks of travel time and billions in cost. That geography is Iran's inheritance. Iran didn't create it. It simply recognized what it meant. Now here's the first layer. Iran doesn't need to close Hormuz to extract value from it. It only needs to make closure feel possible. The moment that possibility becomes credible, markets price it in. Insurance companies price it in. Shipping companies price it in. Every tanker that passes through pays a premium that wouldn't exist if Iran weren't sitting on the northern shore with 1,000 fast-attack boats and a demonstrated willingness to seize vessels. That is not a military threat. That is a toll booth. An unofficial, deniable, permanent toll booth on 20% of the world's oil supply. Pause here for a moment, because this is the part that changes the whole picture. An actual Hormuz closure would be catastrophic for everyone, including Iran. Iran's own economy depends on oil exports through that same strait. A full closure invites a U.S. military response on a scale that would threaten the regime itself. And once the closure happens, the leverage is gone. You can only play that card once. So rational actors don't play it. They hold it. This is the precise logic of the historical parallel that almost nobody draws. In 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Soviet Union didn't launch nuclear weapons at America. The weapons sitting in Cuba were valuable precisely because they hadn't been used. The moment of maximum Soviet leverage was not during a launch. It was during the 13 days when every American decision-maker had to calculate what Moscow might do. The threat was the strategy. Iran looked at that playbook and applied it to a waterway. But here's where it gets more significant. The Soviet Union eventually removed those missiles from Cuba. Iran cannot remove Hormuz. The geography is permanent, which means the leverage is permanent. No deal, no negotiation, no sanctions regime removes Iran's ability to threaten this waterway. Every American administration, Republican or Democrat, hawkish or diplomatic, has to govern with this reality present. That's not a temporary crisis. That's a permanent structural feature of global energy politics. Now, the obvious objection forms here. Why doesn't the US military simply neutralize Iran's naval capability? The answer is the second layer, and it's where the U.S. Fifth Fleet's presence in Bahrain becomes genuinely uncomfortable to examine. American naval assets in the Gulf are positioned to protect the Strait. That is the official framing. But here's what that positioning also creates. American sailors and ships within direct range of Iranian missiles and fast attack boats. In January 2020, after the U.S. strike that removed Quds Force commander Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad, Iran fired missiles directly at U.S. bases in Iraq. The strikes were carefully calibrated to cause no American casualties. Iran announced them in advance through Iraqi channels. That level of precision wasn't an accident. It was a demonstration. Iran was showing it could hit American assets, choose not to cause casualties, and control the escalation ladder. That demonstration means any American decision to strike Iran carries the calculation of immediate Iranian retaliation against a very large, very visible target sitting in Bahrain. Pause here again. Think about what that actually means. The U.S. military presence, meant to deter Iran, also gives Iran something to target. Not a weakness the U.S. can eliminate. Because removing the Fifth Fleet removes American deterrence in the region. It's a bind. Iran didn't create the Fifth Fleet, but it has systematically built a strategic posture that turns American strength into American constraint. And there's a third layer that runs underneath all of this, the nuclear dimension. Iran's uranium enrichment reached 60% by 2024. Weapons grade is 90%. Iran has stayed in that ambiguous corridor for years, close enough to weapons capability that it can't be ignored, far enough that it hasn't triggered the specific red lines that would force an Israeli or American military response. This is deliberate. A declared nuclear weapon makes Iran the single highest priority military target on Earth. The ambiguity, Iran might have it, or might be very close, creates deterrence without creating the catastrophe of actually having it. North Korea went all the way and got permanent isolation. Iran is choosing to stay at the edge of the cliff, feet dangling, looking down because that position is worth more than jumping. 3 layers then. Hormuz as toll booth. American presence as constraint. Nuclear ambiguity as permanent insurance. None of these require Iran to fire a weapon. All of them cost Iran relatively little to maintain. Together, they constitute the most sophisticated leverage architecture any non-nuclear, non-superpower nation has built against the United States in modern history. Now, let's bring this to your household because this isn't abstract. If Iran were to seriously disrupt Hormuz traffic, not close it, just disrupt it, oil prices move from roughly $80 a barrel toward $130 to $160 immediately. That's not a projection. That's the range that energy analysts and the IMF have modeled for a 20% supply disruption. For a family in Pakistan driving a normal amount, that disruption arrives as 3,000 to 5,000 rupees of extra petrol cost every month. It arrives as cooking oil that's 20 to 30% more expensive because tankers carrying palm oil from Indonesia and Malaysia face the same rerouting costs and insurance spikes. It arrives as electricity bills that go up 2 to 4 rupees per unit because Pakistan's thermal power plants run on fuel oil that just got more expensive. Added up across a year of serious disruption, an average Pakistani middle-class family absorbs somewhere between 60,000 and 120,000 rupees in additional costs. Not as a headline, as a number on every receipt. That is the war arriving at your kitchen table. Not as a news event, as inflation. Japan, South Korea, India, they absorb it as slower growth and higher industrial costs. Europe absorbs it as energy bills and manufacturing pressure. The U.S., now a domestic energy producer, absorbs it less directly, which is partly why American policymakers can afford to be more aggressive in their Iran calculations than they could have 30 years ago. Here's the question that genuinely divides everyone watching this. Iran's strategy is sophisticated, rational, and depending on your perspective, either a legitimate response to decades of external interference or a destabilizing form of coercion that holds the global economy as an informal hostage. The case for understanding Iran's position: the 1953 CIA-backed overthrow of democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, removed specifically because he nationalized Iran's own oil, is the foundational event in the Iranian political memory. The U.S. supported Iraq during the 8-year Iran-Iraq War. A Navy vessel downed Iran Air Flight 655 in 1988, taking 290 lives, and America expressed regret, but not a formal apology. Decades of sanctions followed. From inside that history, building deterrence through Hormuz isn't aggression. It's survival architecture. The case against Iran's Hormuz posture doesn't just constrain American foreign policy. It holds Japan, South Korea, India, Pakistan, and Europe as indirect leverage nations that had nothing to do with 1953. Iran's proxy network Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iraqi militias, has inflicted substantial costs on civilian populations far from any U.S.-Iran bilateral dispute. And the nuclear ambiguity strategy, however rational, genuinely does make the region less stable for everyone in it. Both of these positions are held by serious, informed people. The honest answer is that they are both partially correct. And the part that makes this genuinely difficult, not just intellectually interesting, but genuinely hard, is that there's no obvious move from here that improves things for everyone simultaneously. Sanctions pressure Iran's economy, but strengthen the hardliners inside the regime. Military action risks an oil shock that crashes the global economy. Diplomatic engagement requires one or both sides to accept terms the other finds politically impossible to publicly agree to. That's not a media failure to explain things simply. That's the actual shape of the problem. So here's where I'll leave you with a choice. Write leverage or hostage in the comments. Leverage: if you think Iran's Hormuz strategy is a rational, proportionate response by a country that's been the target of external interference for 70 years, and that building deterrence through geography is legitimate statecraft. Hostage: if you think that whatever the historical grievances, holding global energy supply as an informal bargaining chip crosses a line that no legitimate government interest justifies. There's no easy answer here, and anyone who tells you there isn't explaining the full picture. In the next video, we're going to look at the Saudi-Iran normalization deal that was brokered in Beijing in 2023. The moment China quietly told America that its 70-year monopoly on Gulf diplomacy was over. Not with missiles, with a handshake. That story is just as significant as this one, and it's even less understood.